So check. This is so that I can know for certain that the sound is on. If you know, you know. Today we're going to talk about how much it costs to immigrate. So if you want to see that, stick around. Okay. So it sounds like we're good in terms of sound, but let me double check again. Okay, so the devil is a liar, and I'm going to get this video done. I don't like the sound, but it certainly, there is sound, so you'll hear something. I'm not really liking the video either. I have on this really nice orange top, and it's not translating. It's not translating. Anyway, we're gonna get this done because clearly some force doesn't want me to do this. But yeah, so let's get started, right? Before we get into how much costs there are, I want to make a couple of things pretty clear. So number one is that I'm not going to give you like a grand total, right? And that's because immigration is a personal thing. It's kind of like health insurance. Everybody doesn't need the same coverage. So everything is not going to be applicable to you. So it really doesn't make sense to give you like a roundup figure. So what I will do is give you a roundup figure of what certain items cost. And then you can write down the things that you think might be applicable to you, and then you can do your own additions and things like that. But I'm not going to give you an overarching figure. The second thing is to remember that there are certain things that you will not have to do that are in this video, and there might be things also that you don't have to do that are in this video. Do or don't. I hope I said both, but that's the other one. And then you also want to remember that some of these things that I'm about to mention, we did them a few years ago, and so those costs may have changed. I've done my best to get the most up-to-date figures, but it does not mean that these are exact. You know, interest rates change all the time. Not interest rates. Exchange rates. Exchange rates change all the time, and so that might impact the cost of certain things, as well as things sometimes just get more expensive. That happens, right? So let's get into it, and we are going to start with a study permit because that's the path that I took. We're going to go study permit, then we're going to do Saskatchewan immigration nominee program, and then we're going to go permanent resident program, which is non-express entry stream. So for the study permit, you will need a few things. Depending on what it is that you're looking forward to studying in Canada, you will need either a degree or a associate's degree or some sort of underlying education that will qualify you for a tertiary program. It could be high school education, I believe, as well, but you need something. You need some sort of baseline to qualify for whatever the program is that you need to study for in Canada, and that cost is above me. So we're not going to talk about that. Depending on what it is that you're going to study, you may also need a language test. We're going to talk about the language test a little bit further down, but that's another cost that you have to factor in maybe. You may also need an education assessment, and this goes back to qualifying for a program. There are some programs that once you studied in an English-speaking country, it does not matter, but there are others that may say, you know what, you didn't earn this degree in Canada, and we want you to have a assessment, which is basically where you go to an institution and they take your transcripts and they take your degree and they verify that it came from a legitimate source and that the quality of this education that you received is in line with what someone in Canada would get if they studied for a similar degree. Cool. So let's talk about the cost of applications. When you apply for a school in Canada, some schools have a application fee. Not all of them do, but some of them do. Some of them might waive them. Some of them might have programs where they just, you know, they reduce it or eliminate it or something. But you should be prepared to spend maybe 90 to 150 Canadian dollars on a application fee. If you need to do a language test, that may be IELTS test or a CELPIP test. This could also include French language tests, but I'm not French speaking, so we're not even going to go there. But that is an option as well if you have your, if you're fluent in French and French is your native language or something like that. Okay, so the IELTS test currently, the current cost in Jamaica is $36,000, which works out to be about 315 Canadian dollars. The CELPIP test, which is the Canadian English Language Proficiency something test, is 280 Canadian dollars. It is cheaper. I sat them both, and it is my opinion the CELPIP is easier to pass. Okay? For the education assessment, if you need one, if you have a regular degree, so by regular I mean a degree that does not warrant a professional license to use, right? So this, think humanities, so maybe a degree in education, a degree in language, or a degree in literature, writing, those sorts of degrees, right? Or social sciences. Think business, think marketing, think computer, right? The same is also true for some science degrees. So maybe like a degree in biochemistry or a degree in chemistry, right? A degree in biology, things like that. If you have a engineering degree, like a professional degree, like an engineering degree or a nursing degree or a degree in medicine, then we start to go into specific entities that can do your educational assessments, and the processes will also be different as well. So for this particular one that I'm about to tell you, that if you have a regular business or management degree like myself, this is what you will pay. So it costs $248. That's for the assessment, and $50. The $50 for me was to pay for the transcript, because I had to. So you go on the website, you fill out what you need to fill out, and you pay them. But you also need to get your transcript sent to them, and you can't send it yourself. Well, you couldn't back in the day when I was doing it. COVID happened since I did it. So, I expect maybe there is a little bit more flexibility in terms of the digital thing, but we had to mail and whatever when I was doing it. And so I had to go to UE, where I went, and I had to pay UE to pay for the transcripts, and then I had to pay UE to send those transcripts directly to World Education Services, which is where I used to assess my degree. So the total for that is about 300 Canadian dollars, and that totals approximately 40,000 Jamaican dollars. I'm rounding these up to give you round, nice whole numbers, but you understand. All right. Like I said, that was for regular, social sciences, humanities sort of degrees. If you have a medical degree, very specific to a degree in something in medicine, not, this hasn't to do with like if you're a pharmacy, or I don't know if it's different if you did dentistry or something like that, but this is very specific to medicine. If you have a medical degree that you need to be assessed, it needs to be done by the Medical Council of Canada, that's MCC. And before you can do that, there are a number of things that you need to do. Let's talk about step one. Step one is signing up for a Physicians Apply account. To register for the account is a cost, and that cost is $328, right? That's before you do anything at all. That's just to have the account registered to you. Okay. And then you pay $228 to have the degree source verified. What that means is you will send them your documents, a copy of your degree, a copy of your transcripts, blah, 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 blah. But you will also need to go to the institution that you studied at and pay them to respond when the Medical Council of Canada contacts them. Okay? So, to get that done is $228 per credential. So if you have more than one, you will need to pay that $228 per credential. Okay? I want to caution you though, if you have so after your medical degree, if you have like my husband has a DM, if you have like Doctor of Medicine degree, which is his residency, so he has a specialty degree. If you have one of those, they will assess it and give you a pass rating. They will not give you a education assessment certificate for it. They'll simply say, oh, you passed, right? They won't give you an ECA. So if you're going to do express entry, there are no points for that. Well, in our case, that was what it was. There's no points for that. So you only get the points for the medical degree, which you get the points for like a master's or a professional degree to practice, right? But we're not there yet, which in our case, my husband went to UAE as well. For him, he had to also go and pay UAE to respond, like I said, so there's that cost, which is about $20 Canadian. And then once that has been done, which takes a number of months, then you can apply for the education certificate, which costs another $128. Right? So let's say, for example, you have one medical degree and you are getting that assessed so that you can get those points for express entry. That whole process is going to run you about 690 Canadian dollars, which is about 80,000 Jamaican dollars. Again, if you have more than one degree and you're going to assess them all, then that number is going to go up. If two of you are medical professionals, if you and your spouse are applying and you both have medical degrees or degrees in some sort of science field, just keep that in mind, that the cost for that is a little bit high. And then there's the costs for the actual study permit. So when you make the application for the study permit, you will pay for the permit itself, and you will also need to pay a biometrics fee. And that total, so one study permit, one biometric fee. If you need to pay it, like if you didn't give your biometrics in the last 10 years, if you don't have like a visitor's visa or something like that, then you will need to do that. And it will be a total of $235 for your study permit and biometric fee. And that works out to be about 27,000 Jamaican dollars. No, this does not include tuition, which obviously we all know by this point that Canadian tuition for international students is extremely expensive. If you're going to do like a 1-year program that is not a master's or a PhD, think $16,000 to $20,000 per year. Now, there are obviously places in Canada where you can get lower fees. So I've heard as low as maybe $7,000 or $8,000 per year for programs, for like diploma programs and things like that. But obviously that varies, so that is important, and you want to figure out where you're going to study, and you want to put a little research into it to make sure that you are well within that. And then beyond your tuition fees, you will also need living expenses, and the total is currently 20,000 something. I can't remember the exact figure off the top of my head, but it's 20,000 something per person. So that is something that you always want to keep in mind. So let's say, for example, you're coming to Canada to study for a year, one single dega year. Let's say your tuition is 17,000. That $17,000 is gonna work out to about 1.9 Jamaican dollar, 1.9 million Jamaican dollars. Oh, I have the figure here for living expenses. So 1 year of living expenses, you need $20,635, which is about 2.3 million Jamaican dollars. And then there's the language test. In the simplest format, it could be that you simply need your application fee and your study permit and biometric fee and your tuition fee and your living expenses. It could be that way, but again, immigration is like a health insurance in terms of how personal it needs to be. Okay, so let's go now to the next section, which is Saskatchewan immigrant nominee program, right? All right. If you are doing an application under, so there are several streams on the SINP program. If you are applying under the express entry or the occupation in demand streams, there is a fee of $350 for your application. And there's a whole process, right? You can't just go be like, I'm going to apply and send them money. Like there's a whole system. You will have to qualify. You might need, there's an eligibility chart, things like that. So this is about none of that. It is just purely about the cost. If you're doing the student stream, not just the student stream, but worker with Saskatchewan experience stream, then it doesn't cost anything. There's no application fee for that. So $0 and 0 cents. Okay. So now let's go through the costs for permanent residents. All right. So the first thing is that you will need a police certificate. That will cost you about 3,000 to 8,000 Jamaican dollars, depending. I believe it is dependent on how much days service you get in or something like that. So that's about 26 to 50 Canadian dollars. You will need a medical, which runs you about 300 Canadian dollars. You will need proof of funds. Again, this is something that is unique to your family size. So if it's U1, $14,690. If it's 2 add some money to that. If it's 3, add some money to that. If it's 4, add some money to that. I do not have the complete list with me. I will link it in the description box below. But then you do have to make sure that you have those costs. But I believe those things did not make it onto this. I'm gonna look for it. We'll soon come back. Okay. So the application fee for permanent residents is $950, right? But you also need to pay a right of permanent residence fee. So the total for one application and one right of permanent resident fee is 1,525 Canadian dollars. You can pay them separately. I believe you can, but it's not recommended because if, let's say, for example, you submit your application and you don't pay right of permanent resident fee and your application is approved, then your application is going to stall until you pay that fee. So it's really not recommended that you do it like that. And that $1,525 is per person. So if there's 2 of you, 2 adults, then double it. There is also a cost of $260 per dependent child. So if you have 1 kid, $260. If you have 2 kids, times that by 2, 3, 4, all the way up. You will also need to pay biometrics fee again. When you give your biometrics for a temporary residence application, if you're going to do another temporary residence application, then you don't need to pay the fee again, and you don't need to give biometrics again. But if you're doing it for permanent residence, then you have to give it again. In our case, we ended up submitting 2 permanent residence applications. So we had 2 applications simultaneously. Yes, we had to pay the biometrics fee for one, and then pay another set of fees for another. When we got our refund, we did not get the biometrics fees back. We also did not get our application fees back because they had already started to process that application. The only thing we got back was the right of permanent residence fee, which is like 500 and some. But keep that in mind. So that would be the total cost of what you need to immigrate to Canada, if it is that you're going to go through the student stream and then do provincial nomination. In Saskatchewan specifically, each province has their own, and then do permanent residence. So let's talk about the list of documents that you will need. And I decided to leave this to the end of the video because once I give you this list, then you need to understand that you will need different documents for each section. But this is a complete list of all the things that we needed to go from point A to point B, which is from a student to permanent residence. So let's start with the most obvious. That is your passport. Everyone who is on your application will need a passport. And that's assuming that you're from a country and you're not American citizen or anything like that. I don't know anything about how Americans immigrate to Canada. Okay, you will need your education documents. Now, whether that is your associate degree, or your degree, or your master's, or your PhD, whatever it is that you're telling the government that you have, then you'll need documents to prove that. You will also need proof of work experience. If you're claiming work experience, particularly in express entry, if you claimed points for work experience, then you need to prove that you have that experience that you said that you had. So you will need like a letter from your job. You will need like past pay stubs, maybe bank statements, whatever you can use to help to prove that you were working in this job that you said you were working and you were getting paid is what you need to provide. Let's say, for example, though, for example, in SINP, if you're doing the student stream, you need to have a job offer. So you will also need a job offer. So in my case, I needed several things. So I needed the proof of work experience. I needed to prove that work experience. I needed to provide a job letter. I needed to provide pay stubs. I also needed to provide T4s. And they asked for every single one. Okay? And then I also needed like an offer for my job as well. They also asked for a job approval letter, which is something completely different, and it takes a long time to get done. It's something that your employer has to get. So basically, when you're applying for the student stream, you need this job approval letter. It's where your employer basically fills out a bunch of forms with the Saskatchewan government to say, we want to hire this person. This is the job, these are the duties, this is the pay, yada, yada, yada. And really what it is like a registration of the position so that they can make sure that the job is legitimate, that they're not taking advantage of you and underpaying you and things like that. So it has to be paying what they would pay a Canadian if a Canadian was doing the job, things like that. It does take some time to get, but that is also another way that you need to prove that you have this job offer. When you're applying with for permanent resident under the non-express entry stream, you need a job offer, right? So you need a job. Because you need a job, you don't have to provide proof of funds. So you get what I'm saying? So if you're doing express entry, like if you're getting the PMP, if you're getting your provincial nomination and you expect that you're going to use that into your express entry, then you need your proof of funds. However, for permanent residents, what you're doing is saying to the government, you have this provincial nomination and you plan to live and work in this province, and how you're going to prove it is that you have a job offer and that you qualified for the stream under which you received your nomination. So you do that with your job approval letter and your things like that. And that allows you to not need proof of funds. Me, because me enough, I had provided it anyway, just to be on the safe side. They also ask you for proof of your residency status. So if you're a student or if you're a worker or anything like that, you will need those documents to prove that. For SINP, they also ask for you to prove that you are a resident of Saskatchewan. Your notice of assessment will also show that you filed your taxes in Saskatchewan. You will need to provide a health card, your provincial health card, which you don't get unless you live here and you qualify for healthcare, which is like after 3 months or something like that. And then your Saskatchewan ID. So that's your Saskatchewan driver's license or your Saskatchewan provincial ID. Those are also documents that you need. If you're outside, they may ask you for a settlement plan or something like that. Something to show that you intend to be in Saskatchewan. I don't know what those documents look like. I don't know, because I was a resident. But just be prepared that you might have to provide that. You will need to provide your language test if the provincial nomination program that you qualified for required you to have a language test. If it doesn't, then you don't need it. But if you do, then you need it. Or if you're doing express entry, then you need it. But, so for example, under the student stream, like if you studied in Saskatchewan or you studied in Canada and then you got your work experience in Saskatchewan and you're applying for the student stream, then you, how may I talk about again? Oh God, the thought fly out of my head. Oh, the language test, yes. So with the language test, if your job is in tier 0, 1, 2, or 3, I believe, then you don't need a language test. But if it's anything lower than that, then you need a language test, right? You have to also provide regular documents if you're married. Then you have to provide a marriage certificate or you're divorced or you're common law or whatever you're saying that you are, whatever status you're saying that you are, then you have to provide your documents to prove that. You will also need to provide birth certificates and adoption certificates and things like that for any children that you have, and for yourself. I believe that Saskatchewan asks for those as well. And then you need your generic application form to fill out. Everything is done online, but you do have those forms that you need to fill out. Then you have dependent declaration form. You also need to do a Schedule A, which is a background form, and you need additional family information form. They also have this like checklist. So they give you a checklist, and your checklist is literally a part of your application. So you have to fill out that you have all the documents that they said that you needed to have, and that forms part of your application as well. And of course, if you've got a provincial nomination, then you need to provide the provincial nomination documents and certificates, and make sure that you're doing your application within the time frame that is stipulated on that nomination document by way of the expiration date. So, I believe I've covered you. I've told you passport, education documents, proof of work experience, proof of temporary resident status, or proof of Saskatchewan residency, or settlement plan, I have told you marriage and basically marital status documents, birth certificates and adoption certificates, divorce decrees or whatever, language tests, uh, education assessments, that's come under education as well, and then your application forms, all of the generic application, da 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 da. You also need your police certificate as well. We talked about that, and I believe that is it. Your police certificate. Oh, what I didn't tell you with the police certificate is that if you're in Canada, then the cost isn't just the cost. So what we had to do was we paid for we had someone pay for the tax receipt in Jamaica, and then we get the tax receipt, and we also had to go to a, what do you call it, accredited fingerprinting place, took our fingerprints, then they gave it to us. Then we fill out the police certificate form, put everything, the picture, signed by the JP or notary public, that's what I'm calling it here, put the fingerprints, the application form, pictures, and the tax receipt, the tax office receipt in the thing. And we also had to purchase a label. So when we go to the courier place, buy a label. When you're paying to send it, you have to pay at the same time for it to come back, because they will not pay for it for you. So you have to pay for it to come back. You don't have to pay for the tax certificate in Jamaica. You can do like a bank draft or something like that. And all of those details are on the commissioner, the police website. So I don't think we took 54 minutes this time. But I hope this was helpful for you in terms of helping you navigate the cost and figure out what it is that you might need. Obviously, like I said, it's not going to apply to everybody. Everything is not applicable to everyone. But I think it's a good running start for you to, put your plan together. As usual, I hope that this was valuable to you. If it was, please share it with someone. And if you like what we talk about on this channel, which is a little bit of everything, just life and, tips and tricks and, a little bit of sharing, then be sure to subscribe and tell someone who you think might enjoy this content. All right, I think I'm done. And my battery is running low, and I'm going to go back to what I need to do because I did not plan to do this today. I will see you in the next video.